Yay.
Yay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jerry Petito.
I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass.
And in time this too shall pass.
I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass.
Jerry Petito taught the class.
I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass.
Loves the answer, the greener grass.
I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass.
One day at a time, free at last.
When you don't know just what to do,
Just what to do, just what to do.
if what you're feeling is really true,
Is it really true? Is it really true?
just keep your ideas safe and sound.
Safe and sound, safe and sound.
That's exactly how change is found.
Change is found, change is found. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass.
And in time this too shall pass.
I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass.
Jerry Petito taught the class.
I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass.
Loves the answer, the greener grass.
I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass.
One day at a time, free at last.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jerry Petito Show on HamiltonRadio.net. I'm giggling over here because I'm just so excited. Okay, so anyone out there who knows me knows I'm the author of I'm Not an Addict, I'm Just an Ass. I'd rather be a smart ass than a dumb ass. Because, guys, 28 years ago, I was a dumb ass, but today I'm now a smart ass. So if anybody out there knows someone that needs help, and unfortunately, I don't think there's anyone out there who doesn't know someone who struggles with addiction. I'm here to help them free of charge. I'm also a nutritional health coach. I will help anybody out there who needs help for free. If you watch my show tonight and you message me, I will send you one of my books for free. Okay? We're here to help people. God is so good, guys. Who would have thought 28 years ago that I'd be here today? And I have to tell you something really incredible that's happened to me. I was nominated into the International Hall of Fame 2019, and I got the call 2 Thursdays ago that I will be inducted in December. Who would have thought that 28 years ago? I'm saying that to say this, guys. I don't care how old you are. I wrote my first book in my 50s. I became a radio show host only a few years ago. Anything's possible. So whatever your struggles are today, however old you are, never say never. I've had authors on my show in their 80s. Okay? We're here to help you. I have to say that because that's really my theme for all my shows, okay? I have to say that. So we're here to help you. Just get in touch with me, private message me. Having said all that, I am so excited about my guest tonight. I want to say, introduce yourself first off.
Hi, I'm Gino, former Rolly. I work sometimes with the radio station here in unison with Big Man's Management. It's a company that we run, me and my partner Kim, who's off camera, that we promote in the area. Obviously, the name Big Man would probably be, resonate with a lot of you guys. As far as Clarence Clemens, Clarence's son, Nick III, started this company. Me and Kim run the promotions department. And we promote live music in every kind of venue, from small to large, and try and bring, really good music to the community, and kind of what we're doing here today.
Well, I want to say this before we get to my guests. So, Gino, they sing, you sing.
A little bit. I try.
Listen to me.
Kim sings.
Kim is off the charts, okay? And forget it. She's one of the greatest singers ever. She really is. If anybody's local on Sunday nights, Friendlies in Robbinsville, you can come out. They do open mic, karaoke. It's an incredible night, guys. I'm there some Sundays. If you message me, maybe I'll go to meet you, okay? So that's what they do.
Tonight, too.
So, you're doing it tonight?
Tonight in PJ's.
Okay, say it.
Right here tonight, PJ's. What is it? 26 Main Street here in Robbinsville, 6:30 to 10. We don't do karaoke tonight. It's just open mic, but we have a nice setup.
Cool.
If you play acoustic guitar, electric guitar, we have a keyboard set up. We go 3, 4, 5 songs a piece. We have a nice little group. We're just started here, but we're actually looking for more players. The more the merrier. We have a nice little room, kind of a coffee house vibe, and it's kind of cool to see local people come out. And we've really found some real good talent. We've actually booked some locals who just walked in.
Very cool. And this beautiful lady here my connections from Gino, and I thank you for that because I'm so
My honor.
excited. I'm really excited. Thank you, Gino. So, why don't you just tell everyone your name? Then I'm going to read the poem, and they'll find out who you are.
Okay.
Let's do it that way.
All right.
Tell everyone your name.
My name is Mary Meuheiser.
Okay, guys. So, I wrote a poem. This was a very quick interview connection. I had a cancellation tonight, and Gino said, I think my friend can do this for you. And when he told me who she was, I was like, the cancellation was godsend because this is just unbelievable to me. So I didn't really have time to get all her information to write the guest poems that I usually do, but I did do a little bit here just so you guys can know who she is. Doc G, I think I need to be turned up. Sharon, can you guys hear me okay when I talk out there? Let me know if the sound is okay, guys. All right. Whoa, turn
Supposed to be
that
on
off.
silent.
Okay, I hear me better, thank you. Okay, the poem I titled is Paying Homage. Music is said to define who you are. The kind you are singing really matters by far. So many singers can sing high and low, but as years go by, they come and they go. But all these years later, through all of their fame, new voices I've heard who are now in the game. There's so many genres, choices galore. There's hip-hop and rap, jazz, blues, and much more. I'm here to introduce my incredible guest to share with us about two of the best. Her name is Mary. Tell me how you say your last name so I say it properly.
Meuheiser.
Okay. Her name is Mary. Meuheiser's her last. If it sounds familiar, it's from our past. Maury's her brother's name, a lead guitarist for this guy. Jim Croce was the man he took off with in the sky. Jim Croce's lead guitarist, Maury's sister, is my guest to share with us his story, again, about two of the best. Their first LP in '72, You Don't Mess Around with Jim. Their second, Life and Times, was a great hit for him. Their third LP, I Got a Name, recorded in '73, then what a shame. That fatal crash just 1 week later that took both of their lives. Maury was 24 and Jim Croce was 30. Their music still survives. Some of their other hits, I must mention now, Bad Bad, Leroy Brown, and Operator, wow. The incredible song we remember most, Time in a Bottle, heard coast to coast. Let's start this show, 'cause I'm all ears. Let's give homage through love and tears. Mary, my friend, I'm honored today to have you right here with so much to say. Keeping Maury alive for all he has done. Him and Jim Croce are still number one. That's for you, and that's for you.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, sweetheart.
So sweet.
Oh.
You're amazing.
No, you are. For
We just
even
connected yesterday.
so
and
beautiful.
You've managed to turn that. Oh, it's very nice. Lovely. Thank you.
So, you sent me a little information, or no, actually, yes, you did, and I also went online. I mean, I was born in '61, so I was 13. It wasn't like I didn't know. I remember that like it was yesterday. So tell us, why don't you look into the camera, sweetheart? Tell everyone out there why you're here and what you want them to know about Jim and especially your brother.
Okay. Well.
You can get a little closer.
Growing up with someone who was so talented, our family was very fortunate to hear my brother's music be created right there in our home. And then when he made an album for Capitol Records, and they asked for someone to back up him on guitar, they said, "Would you mind meeting a friend of ours?" And this friend was a guy named Jim Croce. Who was relatively unknown, actually, at the time. And so things turned around. Jim backed Maury for about 1.5 years, and during that time, Maury started to help Jim work on some of his unfinished songs. And I would say the rest is history, but the story is much longer than that. They got a record deal, ABC Records, and made an album, started recording in October of 1971, and that album came out in April '72. When they skyrocketed during those next 18 months, and unfortunately, as many of you know, they perished in a plane crash in September of 1973. So they were just really, feeling the fame that they were due. And I just, the record producers loved Maury so much that they wrote a song called Maury. And in that song, this was Cashman and West who wrote this, they said that it was a shame the world would never know you. And I have made it kind of my life's work to make sure that the world does know Maury. And in so doing, I want them to know more about Jim, too, and what a nice guy he was. So that's basically my dream, is to make sure the world knows my brother.
Well, I'm here to tell you they do, because, I didn't realize the depth of guitarists, okay? I'll talk to people who are in the music industry and I'll say, oh my gosh, so-and-so, I love the way he sang. And they'll be like, yeah, but did you check out the guitarist? Did you check out the drummer? They're like incredible, and they go on and on. So your brother's not forgotten.
Yeah.
And that's really incredible because, and Jim Croce, like I said, I was 13 when he passed away, and everybody knows them, So you got to know Jim personally?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He, Maury, when he was getting ready to promote his album, which is called Gingerbread, and it was Capitol Records' album release in 1970, he was he was asked, do you want to meet this guy? So so Maury met him, and they hit it off right away.
Okay.
They were, they had a lot in common, and yet they were like 6 years apart, but they just seemed so similar. They just clicked. And so Maury said, to the family, everybody make sure you're home on this afternoon. It was October of 1970. And he said, make sure you're home because I want you to meet my new friend. And he's going to play backup guitar for me. So we all made sure we were home from either school or work. And in came this guy and his wife. And the three of them, Maury and Jim and Ingrid, sat down on the living room floor, just, like guys do when they're jamming. And they just started singing songs. It was great. So that's how we met. And we had a house full because there were 8 children in our family.
Oh, wow.
So, Jim was kind of looking at us like, okay, and Maury told me about you. You're so-and-so, you're so-and-so. So he was trying to figure out, who all the brothers and sisters were, and it was kind of fun. But it was just our own private little concert. But he wasn't Jim Croce, to us at that time. He was Jim, Maury's friend. So it was kind of, just like hanging out with a friend or having another brother in the house.
Well, I pulled up a photo that I put in my ad. It was a beautiful photo of them in the plane. The plane was on the ground and smiling at the camera. And that was right before it happened.
Well, I think that may have been probably several months, maybe about 6 months. They're in winter jackets. A lot of people think that's a photo that is seen a lot on the internet.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of people think that was the last time because I think it just kind of it touches you so much to see them in a plane.
Okay,
But they're
gotcha.
in winter jackets, and Louisiana in September is pretty hot. So someone did snap that. I'm not sure who took it, but it
But I
has
love
become
that. Yes.
become kind of an iconic
Gotcha.
Might be a mystery
photo.
to see who actually did take that photo and where it was from.
Yeah,
for
they
all these years.
started.
Yeah.
They started taking the small charter planes probably around February or March. So it makes more sense to me that would have been
Gotcha.
in early
I
1973.
want to ask a question about that because this is things I've heard different over the years. That show that night, was that something that was postponed previously and they went back to do because I guess when it was scheduled originally, that's when they really took off? And Jim, I guess, had to reschedule it down the road, and they went back to do it just for that one show. Correct?
I know that it was rescheduled. I
Yeah.
believe that it was because he had a little problem with his throat.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
they were singing and
Yeah.
playing so much that he started to have a problem with his throat. So he had to take a little bit of time off in May.
Right.
So I believe that show was one of the shows that was canceled back in like April or May.
I remember reading
And he
it.
promised he would.
Yeah, Jim said, "Don't worry, I'll come back.
Yeah.
Tell everybody to hold their tickets, and we'll fit it in somewhere down the road."
Yeah.
the irony of that just
I
always,
know.
and that always got to me. That he was doing something good, that they were going back to,
wow.
hold up to, their promise.
Right.
The funny thing is I saw this in an article that when they first had the show scheduled, they hadn't really been that big yet, and now here they were coming back, and all they were these superstars coming back to this small college. And that just, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That it's still, amazes me. I was only 8 at the time, but the thing is like, I've shared with you. I said my sister was 7 years older, and she had the biggest crush on your brother. Okay,
A lot of girls. A lot of girls
on
did.
your brother, and because she loved the long hair, and she just,
wow.
he seems such a soft-spoken kind of guy. She just, she liked Jim Croce's music, but she's like, she always talked about your brother. But when that happened, I, don't mess around with Jim, and I probably memorized every song on that album, and I just hear some of those, and my favorite song, "Welcome Back to Georgia." The guitar playing on that song, the minute you hear it, you feel like it's a soft country road in the summertime.
Yeah.
And what his music did for Jim's lyrics, it was words and music. It was perfection. It really was.
Yeah, I always say that Maury painted pictures with his songs,
Absolutely.
and he helped Jim a lot, and I think that both of them had that same kind of style where you could get into their songs so easily in your head and
absolutely.
just say, that's where you were. You were in New York. You were struggling, or
Yeah.
you were in Georgia walking down a country road.
Yeah.
They made you feel the song.
It's funny, even at the time, I didn't realize that Jim was only from South Philly. And even as a little kid, you see in the pictures of him on a country road, you figure he was from Georgia or somewhere, Alabama, and here he's a South Philly kid. But
Yeah.
he just, his songs and his lyrics, the two of them combined, the sound of it, just knew how to touch, like, I call it Americana, but that's basically, and I liken them up there with Simon and Garfunkel or anybody
yes.
else, definitely. And it's, the only thing is what would have been. That's where they would have gone, would have been probably amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
How old were you, Mary, when he passed away?
I was 23 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a year or so apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so we had a sister who was 5 years older than Maury, and we had a sister 3 years younger than me,
Okay.
and 4 brothers younger than that, and so it was Peggy Ann, Maury, Mary Ann, Joe, Tom, Michael, Robert.
Okay.
And so we all were devastated.
Yep.
It broke hearts.
What actually happened with that? Because there's so many different stories going around. It said it really didn't even get up.
It did get up. It did just get off the ground.
Just
it was
got off
only
the
about 30 feet off
Right, okay.
the ground and hit a tree at the end of the runway.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking.
So it was heartbreaking, and it was, it was hard to hear. Nowadays, probably happens for families in the same kind of way, where they might hear it through the news instead of actually getting a call, and that is. It's sad, but news, even back then when news wasn't so in the forefront, there was a news broadcast first, and people were hearing it on the radio and calling.
Oh, wow.
And there were, it was on the radio,
That
people
must
were
have been
hearing
traumatic
it.
for your family,
and
too,
called,
not getting official.
Yeah, and called my parents' house, and my dad answered. And so then they called my house because I was married and not living at home. And so, you hear it, I guess, how you're going to hear it, and everybody has their story,
That it's almost like the scene out of the La Bamba movie,
Yeah.
where the brother runs around the corner and the mother hears it on the radio and she's on the ground crying.
Yeah.
That's unimaginable. That really is.
Yeah. So, I mean, each of us heard it and felt it in our own way. But it was devastating to everybody, and for our family in particular, of course. And then Jim's family, and everybody. I mean, I remember I went to work because I didn't believe it. I worked at Squibb, and I said to my husband, "I'm getting dressed, and I'm going to work because this can't be. It's on the radio, but they've made a mistake." So I went to work, and the people at work knew that all I ever did was talk about my brother, and they had heard it on their radios on the way in. So they said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I have to work, But that's what you do. You block it out. You don't believe it really happened.
Yes.
And so, I think everybody kind of went to school and did their own thing. And then the people at work took me home to my parents' house. And I was 6.5 months pregnant, so I wasn't thinking right anyway.
Wow.
And so, we all ended up gathering at my parents' house, and I remember sitting on the front porch and watching cars go by very slowly, and people coming out on their front porches
only
because it was a
imagine,
very
yeah.
tight-knit neighborhood, and people walking down the street like they were hearing it and thinking, well, if I walk by and it doesn't look like anything's happening, maybe this isn't real. So nobody wanted it to be
Right. of
for
course.
real, But there are a lot of happy memories.
So
you
let's
know?
talk about the happy memories.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what was your favorite song?
Oh gosh, of a Jim Croce song.
With your brother playing.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's really hard because I love them all. "Time in a Bottle" is beautiful. I
That's
mean,
my
because who
fave.
can't relate to that?
Right.
I will have to say there was one song that Maury told us about. We all got together a few days before on a Sunday. We had a family picnic, and Maury told us about this song. And he said, Jim says the title of the song is so long it would wrap around the album. And he said, we call it, I've got them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blues. But he said, that's probably not going to
It's an
end up being
amazing
what we're
song.
going to put on the album jacket. But
I think they just went with working at the car wash. Blues,
working
right?
at the
Yeah.
car wash blues. So anyway,
song.
it was just so funny. We all laughed, and he said that it's going to be a great song. You're going to love it, and it was. I mean, again, you picture the guy who's like, this isn't enough for me. I want to do something more. I want to be smoking a
always
big cigar.
Smoking a big cigar, walking home in soggy shoes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
That's so cool.
But he's got those steadily depressing,
I
low
know it
down
by
mind
heart,
mess,
yes.
and working the car. So I mean, I loved stuff like that because they had fun. They really had fun writing these songs and making people happy. I know that before Maury even met Jim, when he played his music, all he wanted to do was see people smile. He'd always say, I want to make people smile. I want to make people happy. And Jim was that same kind of guy. What was the line that he used to say? A good time man like me ain't got no business singing the blues.
Right.
They both had that same feeling, like, let's make people happy. And when they went out, if you watch any of the videos on YouTube, you can see them looking out at the audience and wanting to see
The reaction.
the reaction. Are we
Absolutely.
making you happy? Are we giving you a good time?
So, did they make money?
Yes, they did.
Were they as
It's-
rich as everyone thinks they should have been?
Well,
I'm asking you for a reason.
It's rich. It's rich in a different way.
Yes.
I don't know all the ins and outs of the record business, but you get a contract, with a record company, and they front the money.
Yes.
Jim didn't want for anything through that time. I mean, he was only out on the road for 18 months, but all of the hotels were paid for, all of the airfares were paid for.
Okay.
He didn't need to have money in his pocket. He had a manager that was with him. You're in trouble. Anytime, it's like church.
I keep muting it. It keeps turning itself on. It's got a mind of its own.
It's church.
It's like
Head,
church.
I'm sorry.
That's great.
So,
But-
anyway, he anything he wanted, he could have.
Right.
There was somebody there to pay for their meals. So he wasn't rich in that the money was pouring in. He had a business manager, a financial manager,
Okay.
who had an office in the Empire State Building and an office in L.A.
So he was rich.
He managed the money. All the money that came in went into some kind of an account,
Okay.
and everything was covered for Jim. And money was sent home to his wife so that she had
Okay.
an allowance every week.
The reason I'm asking is because before I started interviewing a lot of people in the entertainment business, okay, Al Contrare from the Mystics, Ken Brady from the Casinos, they're all my good friends now. Prior to all that, we have this idea that, oh my gosh, these singers and stars from back in the day were so rich, so lucky, all this stuff, right? Not really.
It's not that easy.
You know, it's not, like you said, they were rich in other ways and they didn't have to want for anything. And, someone said to me recently, and I'm not going to say who, from one of the groups, said to me, Jer, I was so much happier when I wasn't working for money. He said, it took the spark out of me. And, that made me a little sad because I'm an artist in a different way. I'm an artist, I'm a writer, and
And a poet.
well,
And a poet.
right, and a poet, but I don't sell my work. Okay? I can't. I can't even, if someone said to me, you have to make something for me, then I know I'm already disconnected from it. Okay? But when I do stuff, I'm like, I can't sell this or give this away,
Right.
So I get it,
Yeah.
and these incredible artists, when they're singing, like you said, they look out into the audience and they want to see the reactions. Are they making people happy? That's where their joy is.
That's their their
people-
compensation
yes.
is that joy.
Right.
Was it hard? Yes. You're sleeping maybe in a different bed for a week
Yes.
or every single night
Yeah.
from one day to the next. Is it hard to live out of a backpack? Because they mostly used backpacks because they didn't need that much.
Right.
So like you say, living out of a backpack instead of a suitcase,
Yes.
but they basically did. There was no time to unpack. They'd go from, doing a show and getting up in the morning and going to another show, another town, put your stuff down, go to this show, go back, go to bed, get up the next day, and you're moving on. So it was hard eating different foods in different places, drinking different water. It wasn't easy on their tummies.
Yeah, I bet.
They had problems every once in a while. It's
No,
hard
I
to be
can
on
relate
the road.
to that. I did it for 12 years.
Did you?
Oh yeah, when I worked with John Eddie, I would tour manage for him, and we would be, sometimes we didn't do 6 months tours, but we would do 20, 30 days, or we'd be here, Asbury Park on the weekend, and then Sunday night take off and then go Chicago, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I did a bulk of the driving, which I insisted upon because, that's who I am, but you never know. I the joke one night, we drove from the Jackson Hole, Wyoming to Des Moines, straight through. All the guys in the band were sick. I wasn't.
Oh, wow.
So I did like 1,100 miles, and we stopped at Des Moines, and there was a Motel 6 and a Super 8 and a Denny's across the street. I got guys checked in. I'm like, I haven't eaten. I was surviving on coffee. I went in, Motel 6, signed them in.
Motel 6,
Right.
guys.
And, well, we did it cheap because it was an overnight stop to drive through to Chicago the next day. Went to Denny's, went back in the hotel, couldn't find my room, and I realized I was in a Super 8. I was so tired. There's your stories. Okay, not to mention the Moose that almost did us in the Grand Tetons. Best driving ever. But the thing is, what you're saying, the biggest thing that I will add to that, and that's where I want to go with it, is that you have to do this. You fly in, you get a few hours of sleep, you hit the hotel room, they're waking you up to go, and then boom, lights on, and you got to be good. That's the big thing, because those people don't know that you're traveling. They're just expecting to see a good show.
Right. That's
right.
I saw with John Eddie over the years, and I see the video that I watch of Jim and Maury. They were always on.
Always
And you
on.
had to be. And sometimes
You're right.
sometimes there are performers that I've seen, even on the road with us, and you're like, wow, they're just not with it today.
Wow.
But they were always on, and that's very
Yeah.
professional.
I want to interrupt you for 1 second because a good friend of mine actually told me a story. He's a famous entertainer, and there were a couple bands that were going to be playing, and the band that got up before them was told, listen, family member just passed away, like a very close family, like could have been a sister or something. Guess what? Got to go perform.
Right.
That's so
Yeah.
you're right.
We've had a few of those.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Kevin McGowan, because he's saying hello, and he comes to open mic at Friendlies, and I
He'll be here
interviewed
tonight,
him,
too.
Oh, good.
and he'll be there tonight. I interviewed him last Wednesday on Remember Then Radio, I believe it was, and he's incredible. He writes his own
Oh,
songs.
did I see him?
No, he's one person who wasn't there the night
You
you
have
came.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna come. I'm gonna be.
Let
at
me know when
PJ's.
you're gonna. When you're.
Tonight.
She's
She's
going to stop down tonight
Yeah.
over at
I have
PJ's
another
after.
show.
Okay.
What time is it?
6:30 till 9:30. I don't
Oh,
know.
no,
Or
I
10
can- I
o'clock.
can
I don't know how
stop-
long Mary's going to stay. I don't want to make her stay the
You're
whole
gonna
time.
stop
but
there afterwards.
yeah.
I could stop there.
Okay.
But anyway, Kevin, shout out. You know how I feel about you. His music is incredible.
Kevin, if you can hear me, you got about an hour to learn a really good Jim Croce, Maury Muehlhausen song.
Yes,
I suggest
please.
I Got a Name or Walking Back to Georgia. Hint, hint.
Or time in a bottle.
Or time in a
Hint,
bottle.
Hint, hint. Time in a bottle, Kev. Hint, hint. So it's okay.
Hi, Kevin.
So who has your brother met?
Oh my gosh.
So tell us some really cool names.
Okay, well, they started out opening for Randy Newman,
Okay.
and they had a great friendship with him. They were on the Johnny Carson show. Maury would call home from wherever he was on the road, and he would call home and say, don't let the kids go to bed. Make sure you watch, Johnny Carson. And Danny Thomas is backstage, and
Oh,
he's
my
really
goodness.
neat. And so it was fun, kind of living vicariously. We didn't even know what the word vicarious was at the time, but I now know we were living vicariously through Maury and Jim being on these shows. Loggins and Messina, and I have a Loggins and Messina story. The Carpenters, they met them. They never were on the road with them, but they met them. They were managed by, they were on ABC Records, I believe. Let's see, Dick Cavett. They were on the Dick Cavett show. They met Dick Clark.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I wrote to Dick Clark years ago, and I said, my brother, because I wanted everybody to know Maury, of course, and I said, my brother was on your show with Jim Croce, and I just wondered if you remembered meeting him. And he was so honest. He wrote back to me, and he said, I remember them being on the show. I can't say that I remember an actual conversation.
Okay.
But he said, I've met an awful lot of people through the years.
Right. And he was honest.
But he was very honest, and I still have that letter. And I told somebody one time, and he said, did he write his initials on the return, above the return address? And I said, yes. And he said, what color are they? And I told him, and he said, he actually licked that envelope.
Oh, wow.
Because he said, that's how you know when it was actually Dick Clark doing that.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
so
very
Maury
nice.
would always call home and say how nice everybody was. There was nobody that he met that he didn't like, and I'm sure there was nobody who met him who didn't like him. Let's see, who
story
else?
you were gonna tell
Oh well,
us?
Kenny Loggins.
Okay.
They went on two, I would say two-week tours
Okay.
with Loggins and Messina. Maury and Jim opened for them, and Maury and Kenny always did the laundry. So like Kenny would say, okay, I've got my underwear and my shirts, and I've got Jim Messina's, and Maury would grab Jim's stuff and his, and they didn't, would be like one load of wash, just some shirts and personal
Okay,
items.
go ahead.
And so Maury and Kenny always did the laundry, and Kenny had a dream, and he told Maury this dream, and he started writing some words down. And so then the two of them finished the song together.
While they were doing laundry.
While they were doing
Jim
laundry.
Croce's laundry?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Jim Messina's.
Yep.
And so they
You were
would...
getting some great nuggets of information here,
ahead.
Jerry.
So they would
earlier.
go down to... They would stay at a lot of Holiday Inns. That seemed to be the place that
Okay.
they would be put up all the time. And so they went down to... they'd sit in the room and start a few lines, and then they'd go take the laundry down, put it in a washing machine, put their money in, and talk and say, how's this sound? And they would go back to the room, finish a little bit more, and then say, oh, better go down, put the stuff in the dryer, and and then they'd fold laundry together, and they're working on the words and the music.
Okay.
And it ended up, it's a beautiful song that actually Maury died a month later. They did this in August of 1973, and Maury and Jim died in September of 73. So Kenny Loggins and Jim Messina did a recording of this song. They renamed it. It's called Fever Dream. Maury and Kenny had called it Kenny's Dream.
So Kenny took his name out of it.
Right, and they named it Fever Dream.
Okay,
And it's
beautiful.
about the apocalypse, and it's just a dreamy, different sounding from anything that.
I have to hear that song.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's one
It's
I've
on
never heard.
YouTube. It's
I
on
will definitely
YouTube.
check that out.
Yeah.
Yep, we
it's
will
very
check
pretty.
it out.
Fever,
Dream.
Dream by Loggins and Messina.
Wow.
That's
But
fantastic.
Maury co-wrote it with Kenny.
Wow.
Yeah. So they were real people, I mean, everybody needs their laundry done.
That's so
You know?
funny. That,
Those are good stories.
you're airing out the laundry here.
No, that's
The dirty laundry. The clean
Dirty
laundry.
laundry. So cool. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
I just
So-
think it's a nice chance for, again, Trenton audience, hometown, to get to know a little more about Maury, because obviously we hear the music. And like I said, the two of them on stage were a full orchestra. That was amazing. But the thing is that you never really got to hear what Maury had to say, and through you, that you can give us a little more insight on who he was as a person. So that's why I was glad that you could make it here. I'm gonna bail because I have to go set up open mic, but I will see you guys downstairs
Okay.
later.
Okay.
And again,
I'll
thank
be
you
there.
for being here for Jerry, and I can't
Thanks
wait to
for-
watch the rest of it later on.
Gino,
Take
thank
care.
you.
Thank
No,
you
no
for
problem.
coordinating this.
See you guys in a little bit.
See you in a little
Okay.
bit. Take care.
Guys, we're going to open the phones. Doc G, can we have phone callers? Okay, guys, we're going to open the phones. So the number is, you can actually post it as well. The number is 609-807-2492. 609-807-2492. If you want to call in and talk to this beautiful lady, you can ask her anything about her brother Maury or Jim Croce. She will answer the best of her ability.
Okay.
Okay?
And while we're waiting for a call, I just want to say it was interesting to me that you said that you were 13 at the time.
Yes.
I have a website that I created years ago about Maury. I just redid it as a WordPress website, and it's beautiful. You have to go visit it.
Yes.
It's maurymuheiser.com. But through the years, I received thousands, honestly,
sure.
messages, guest book messages, and emails from people all over the country and all over the world. And one thing that I have always found interesting is I've gotten so many letters from people who were 13, 14,
Yes.
15. It was such an impressionable
Yes.
time for that
Yes.
age. Everybody was upset, but there was something that touched.
Well, I can tell you what I think.
Yeah, tell me.
Okay, like from my perspective. So I remember, I grew up in Long Island City, New York, and we moved here when I was 12, so I was in 7th grade. And at 13 years old, I was in 8th grade. And that's when, like, I'm going to just say it, like, our hormones are going crazy. So you start getting your first little boyfriend and girlfriends, and these songs were so impressionable for us.
Yeah.
That's why, and all through our teen years. So, their music to me was just unbelievable. We would listen to it. Even in the schools, they would play the music. Time in a Bottle. I mean, that was an unbelievable song.
Yeah. And Operator, I mean,
Oh,
so
yeah.
many people relate to
Yes,
Operator
yes.
because that breakup, I mean,
Yes.
everybody has felt that kind of heartache where, maybe I want to try and get back in touch. No, never mind.
Right.
Maybe I won't. And so people related to that because they thought, well, there's someone who
Right.
felt what I'm feeling.
I mean, your brother being Jim Croce's lead guitarist, think about how beautiful that was. Okay? I mean, we all have our, like Elvis. I'm an Elvis fan. Everyone knows that, okay? But regardless of that, I loved so many musicians back in the day
Oh,
when I was a
sure.
teenager, and all these songs were just so impressionable. And Jim Croce, I mean, come on. And you knew him personally, like, and your
Yeah.
brother, and they were good friends. I mean, what a beautiful
Yeah.
connection, right?
Yeah.
And here I am now today sitting with you.
Yeah, and they were so down to earth. Like every time, I mean, we couldn't fly all over the place. None of us flew anywhere. But anytime they were going to be in Philadelphia at the Main Point, which was where all the great folk artists went back in
Okay.
the day, a lot of people got their start there. The Main Point was the Main Point was in Philadelphia. The Bitter End was in New York. And anytime they were going to be in Philadelphia, New York, or hopefully New Jersey, but most of the things were in the two big cities, Maury would always call. You got to come to New York. Take a train, ride, whatever you can do. Get up to New York. Come to Philly, please. Tell them at the door that you're my sisters and brothers and
right.
mom and dad, And so anywhere they were playing, they wanted us there,
Right.
And so it wasn't like, could you stop coming, we need, the audience. But they were always happy to have family members in the audience, and we were always happy. I mean, thrilled to be there. It was like, that's our brother.
Right. That's amazing.
That's our son. Or my,
That's
how much
amazing.
more proud could you get? You can't wipe the smile off your face when you see people in the audience looking at them like, wow, look at that guitarist, and listen to that guy sing those fun songs or the love songs.
So someone is saying, and it's actually Donna Heller. She's saying "Time in a Bottle" is her favorite song, and I was just talking about you, Donna. Believe it or not, I was
Yeah.
telling her the story about the phone call I got today and the connection. So she said "Time in a Bottle" was her favorite song as
Yeah,
well.
it's beautiful.
I think most women love that song. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. A lot of
Yeah,
men, but
yeah,
you know.
it touches hearts.
Yes, it touches
you know,
hearts. Yes.
and that's what they had a gift for.
Yes. So who else? Who else did he meet?
Okay, let's see.
I mean, this is so cool.
Yeah. Okay, Randy Newman, Woody Allen.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah. So Woody Allen was a comedian. And he played, what, clarinet or something?
I don't know what he played,
But
but
anyway,
he was a comedian.
He was, funny. Everybody loved Woody Allen, And they were at a theater in the Round in Valley Forge, music theater.
Okay.
Out in Pennsylvania, and we all went to that. Of course, we got our phone call. Make sure you get
Did
there.
you meet Woody Allen?
Met Woody Allen.
Oh wow. I'm touching you.
Now he was not a big talker. He didn't say, "Oh, come here, everybody." I need to get to know you.
That's so funny.
But Maury was like, come on, and he went in and said, can my family meet you?
Do you have a photo?
No, we didn't take a lot of pictures. Our cameras were those
Right
little,
about that.
those little Instamatic
Oh,
things with
crazy.
like
You're right.
the 4 cube thing on
You're
the top.
right.
So we really didn't even take a lot of pictures of Maury and Jim, to tell you the truth, because when they came home, we were just visiting them.
Right.
And it wasn't like, oh, let me take a picture of you
Right.
here. We didn't take pictures. We were just visiting. It was so
Okay.
great
Yes.
to have them at the house
Yes.
that it wasn't a photo op.
Right.
I don't have pictures of Maury and Jim
Oh wow.
like that. It's crazy, but the world is different now. You can't go
Yeah,
anywhere that
you're
somebody
right.
isn't picking up their cell phone
You're
and
right.
taking a picture of you, whether you know they are or not.
That's right.
They're just doing it. But I'm sort of glad, because everything's
It was more personal.
it's very personal, and it was just in here. But Jim would take a train from Philly to Trenton.
Trenton.
Then you're really from Trenton
right.
when you say it like that.
That's so funny,
And
yes.
he would take a train and come from the train station to our house, which was maybe a mile and a half from the Trenton
Okay.
train station. And he'd come and say, come on, let's go. And Maury would grab his guitars, and they'd either walk back down to the Trenton train station or go down to the corner and take a bus.
What street did you live on Trenton?
South Hermitage Avenue.
Okay.
So State Street is the main street
Yeah.
that runs through town, one end to the other.
Yep.
And we were on Hermitage, which was just about a mile from downtown. And, Maury was seen everywhere with his 2 guitars, and just, hopping on the bus or walking downtown. I'm sure there are people still around who remember the kid, with the long hair, walking around with his guitars.
crazy.
And so then they would take the train to New York, and they would go to the Hit Factory and record whatever they were going to record that day. Maybe they could have worked on 4 songs or 8 songs or just parts of a song, and then other things would be added the next time that they would go. But then Jim would come home with Maury and sit on the floor, and they'd say, this is what we worked on today. And they'd sing a little bit of it or the whole thing, and get our reaction,
Where did Jim live?
Jim, at the time that we met him, he had just moved from an apartment in New York. He had given up on the music business, and he moved to a little town called Lindell, Pennsylvania.
He gave up on the music.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, Jim had graduated from Villanova University with 2 guys, Tommy West, who had gone and become a record producer in New York,
Okay.
and Joe Salviolo, who had become a professor at Glassboro State College.
Okay.
And that's where Maury met Joe Salviolo. But anyway, so Tommy West and Joe and Jim were great friends in college at Villanova. And when they all graduated and went their own ways, Jim was doing other things in Philadelphia. But Tommy said, he'd be a great first act. And he's singing with his wife, Ingrid. I'll get them both up here, and my partner and I, Terry Cashman, will see if they would be interested in making an album. So they had them come up. They recorded enough songs for an album. Someone else, Merv Frankel, was their manager. And the album was put out before it was totally mixed, so the record producers weren't 100% happy with the sound of it. They started going out to promote it, but it didn't pick up. They went to colleges and clubs all over the Northeast, and the music scene was changing then in the late '60s. It was in 1969.
Okay.
And Jim and Ingrid had sort of an Ian and Sylvia sound, and so it just didn't take off.
Oh.
And so they were disappointed, and everybody was disappointed. We didn't know them at the time, but they said, we can't do this. We're not getting anywhere. So they walked away and went and said, we're going to just go have regular jobs and go back to the Philadelphia area. So that's why they moved to Lindell. Well, just around the same time, Joe, the guy who had become a professor, was meeting Maury, a student at Glassboro State College. So he calls his friend, who he knows the one friend has walked away, and he says, I've got this kid down here at Glassboro who writes all his own songs. And he's great, and you've got to hear him. So Tommy and Terry said, have him make a reel-to-reel of some of his songs. So Maury did that. He spent a summer putting his songs on a reel-to-reel, and Joe Salviolo got them to Tommy, who loved Maury's songs, played them for Terry Cashman. Terry loved Maury's songs, and they said, you've got to get up here. So they got him a Capitol Records deal right away, and that was how he, went on to make the Gingerbread album. And so, what was I saying?
We were talking about, like you said, that Jim was giving up his musical career.
Oh, so he moved to Lindell with
Okay.
Ingrid, and they lived in one third of this little farmhouse. A lot of people have seen the pictures of Jim standing just in a doorway,
Okay.
by a screen door or an open doorway. That was their living room door. If you
Okay.
walked in there, the living room was right there. There's a window to the left, that was their kitchen, and the little window up top, that was their bedroom. So it was a
Okay.
little two-story thing, but the
Okay.
house was much bigger. They just lived in a little apartment on
Okay.
the one side. So so when Maury's album got made, they said, could you meet this guy Jim? And he did. Maury started going there and visiting, and they started just hanging out all the time. Jim was trying to learn the rhythm parts to Maury's songs, and then Maury said, well, what do you have? And Jim said, well, I'm writing a song about a guy named Jim, and I'm writing a song about saving time in a bottle.
Oh, my goodness.
And so Maury said, well, let me hear them. And so Jim played his, basic tune and his basic words that he had started with. And Maury said, well, how about if we do this? And how about if I do blah, 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 blah. So that's how the songs grew. And so they put 5 of those songs on a cassette tape. And Jim was needing money because they just found out that Ingrid was pregnant.
Okay.
And so Jim sent this tape of 5 songs to Tommy West, his friend who he had walked away from, business-wise. And so they were having a little bit of a, hard time. And he said, could you listen to these and maybe get somebody to sing them? And Tommy listened, and then he played them for Terry Cashman. And they said, that's Maury playing his sound, and that's Jim singing. And they said, get them. They've got to get up here because this is a whole new sound, and this could be big.
Wow.
So they went up, and then they started working on trying to get a contract for Jim. So that's how it sort of turned around.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So I have to ask this question. Everybody out there knows me, and they know I'm probably going to ask you this. Did they ever meet Elvis?
No, they never met Elvis. But Maury started playing. It was his first interest in music was because of Elvis.
Of course.
Of course.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. He was a little kid. We were sitting there watching our little wooden box TV in the living room, and we were allowed to watch we were allowed to watch almost anything back then because
Back
everything
then.
was so wonderful.
You're right.
But Ed Sullivan was on, and we were watching it, and here comes Elvis Presley, and he's swiveling his hips, and and singing those songs that we all went crazy over. I mean, we were just little kids. He was 6, I was 5, but we knew this was something fun.
Yes.
Yeah. So he said to Dad, you know, I want a guitar. And Dad said, well, we have a piano.
Oh no.
No, so, you know, we can't afford a guitar. There's a lot of kids in the family. There were only 6 of us at the time, but still, you know, money was
Yeah, sure.
not there. So he said, you can play piano. And he said, no, I don't want to play piano. And so then, you know, a little bit of time went by, and my dad was tinkering with the piano, and Maury said, how did you do that? And Dad said, I just did this, you know, here's a book, and you do
Oh,
blah, blah,
wow.
blah. And so Maury said, oh, okay. And then one day he just started, you know, turning the pages of the book and doing that. And then he sat down one day and started playing Tammy. Do you know, we all love that song. Tammy,
Yeah.
Tammy. Well, my parents said, well, how did you learn that? Because they knew that wasn't in the songbook.
How did he learn that?
And he said, I heard it on the radio. And they play it all the time. And he said, so I figured it out. And so they said, well, you're going to have piano lessons.
Okay, hold on. I have to ask you about that because, you know, I always ask my musician friends, how did they even know that they could be this good at an instrument or even want to play it? It's just something that comes natural right there.
Yeah.
So it was just completely natural
It
for
just,
him.
flowed.
Flowed.
I felt like it was inside him.
Yes.
He was born to play the
Yes.
piano. So if you think he's great playing the guitar, which he was really a genius guitar player, people are still trying to figure out what he was doing. But if you could see him
Really?
play the piano, I mean, he was just amazing.
Oh my
So-
gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he played piano, took lessons from 9 to 17, and he was just so good. And it was just beautiful to watch him, to sit on the stairs. I mean, our piano took up 1/3 of the living room, so you'd sit on the stairs and watch him, and the TV was going, and the kids were watching shows, and somebody was coming in and out the front door. It was crazy, but he was just zoned in.
Wow.
And he would play the piano. So then, when he was 17, he went and bought himself a guitar down at Sears. Saved his newspaper money. He was a paper boy for the Trenton Times.
He bought a new guitar.
Bought a brand new guitar
wow,
for
okay.
$49.95.
Oh wow. How do you remember all these
You know what?
It's crazy.
Everything about Maury is just absorbed
Okay.
into me. The memories are I don't know if it was because we were only a year apart, but you know, we had all the same friends. We listened to the same music. We did,
Okay.
you know, everything. It just solidified. And then I think sometimes with a devastating tragedy, it also just stayed with
Okay.
me. So I just, you know, Maury was
Okay.
like my everything.
Okay.
And so he bought a guitar and a book, came with it, and he taught himself how to play guitar up in his room. And then when he started writing his own songs, he would just wake up in the middle of the night, and he would, you know, you might hear him humming something, and then he'd plunk out a couple strings on the guitar, and he'd run downstairs and play a couple notes on the piano, and he'd run back upstairs, taking the steps 2 at a time, go in his little bedroom at the top of the stairs, and more, and then a whole song would be there in
Wow.
anywhere from minutes to a half an hour. It never took him long to write a song.
Amazing.
It just, a story, he'd wake up with something in his head, and it would just be there. I can't remember anything more than him ever just creating songs that quickly.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it was
It's beautiful.
amazing. Yeah, it was. And the neighbors too were in on it. I mean, we didn't have air conditioning, so the windows would be open as soon as the weather
the neighbors
changed.
loved it.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You never had complaints or the cops called?
No. People didn't. Everybody wasn't like playing their music loud back then.
Okay.
And of course, Maury, it was either a piano or a guitar.
Oh, so they probably loved it and would probably have their ear up against your window sometimes.
It just, everybody would open their windows, you know. There was a family around the corner, a French family.
Yep.
I think they had 7 children, and they all were very gifted musicians. So if it wasn't music coming from our house, it was music coming from that house.
Gotcha.
And kids would be out playing tag or jump rope, and there was music surrounding all of us. So it was a very
So I have a question for you.
fortunate time.
Have you ever like kept in touch with Jim Croce's wife and child? Do you know anything about them?
I do.
Okay.
Ingrid had started restaurants years ago in California, so we didn't have a lot of contact with
Okay.
her because she moved away,
Okay.
and she moved to California right before Jim died.
Okay.
So, being out there, and she was a young woman with a child to raise, and we were a big family who didn't really fly places.
Okay,
So,
okay.
she did come. I had twin babies a couple months after Maury and Jim passed away, and she did come and see the new babies.
Oh, okay.
We
beautiful.
named the first one after Maury. Her name was Maury Ann, and the second one was Beth Ann.
Beautiful.
And so she did come and visit a little bit in the beginning. But then as the years went, she
Right.
had her own life. She eventually opened some restaurants in San Diego and, used Jim's name. And one was Croce's, of course.
Oh, okay.
One was Top Hat Bar and Grill.
Okay.
I think there was Ingrid's Cantina. And I think there were one or two other restaurants.
Oh, wow.
And she did that for a long time. I think she started in 1985 with that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then as far as AJ, who we always called Adrian, his name was Adrian James. I remember the day he was born, and Jim called, and I happened to be home with Maury. And he was like, oh my God, get something to write on, So he'd say, okay, and it's a boy, and, I'm writing all this stuff down. And so that was an exciting moment. But forever we called him Adrian. But at some point in his life, he became AJ Croce.
Okay.
And he is known for his own style of music.
Okay.
Very widespread
Okay.
type. I mean, he does everything. Jazz, blues.
Really? Jim Croce's son?
Yeah,
AJ?
AJ Croce.
Okay, I got to
And
check
he
him
travels all over the world as a solo artist.
out. Okay.
And so I did see him, gosh, when did I go? In 2001, he was at the Sands in Atlantic City, and we went down to see him there.
Well, girlfriend, possible interview here?
You never know.
You never know, and you'll be here with me co-hosting.
Okay. I did get him an interview on a radio show in North Jersey, Rutgers, I think it was.
Okay.
I don't think he did it in the studio. I think it was on the
That's
phone.
okay.
But that was really good. And so AJ he looks a lot like his father,
Okay.
but AJ is his own person. He's
Okay.
got a talent. Talk about Maury playing the piano. AJ is dynamite
Okay.
on the piano. He
Beautiful.
does play guitar now more than he did in the beginning, but he used to play mostly piano. But he's a sweet soul, I would say, very similar to his father's personality as far as soul. I have pictures of him when he was a little kid, and then I did get a picture of him with me.
Beautiful.
I got a picture of him with me when we saw him in the Sands. And then just a couple years ago, he was at the World Cafe Live. Some people probably from this area have gone and seen shows at World Cafe Live in Philadelphia.
I don't know.
It's a radio station in Philadelphia, and then there's downstairs is they bring performers in
Okay.
all the time. So he was there, and I went to see him there, and he's full of energy,
Wow.
Yeah.
Got to give a shout out to Ronald. He's saying
Okay.
excellent show and thank you.
Oh, hi, Ronald.
So yes. Wow. So wow, imagine that, guys. Jim Croce's son might be right, part of an interview here.
You never know.
You never know.
I can get in touch with him. I think
Let's
he's in
get
Europe.
this happen.
I think he's in Europe right now. So, but he does
beautiful.
travel all over the country.
This is beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So, guys, we're coming to the close of the show.
Already?
Yeah, we're coming to the close of the show.
went
We're going to close
fast.
at 6. Stop the show at 6 because you got your thing down
Mm-hmm.
there. I want you to tell everybody out there what you would like them to know or hear about your brother, and maybe even getting in touch with you or your websites.
Okay.
Okay.
My website is www.maury-meuhleisen, MAURYMUHLEISEN.com. And there are beautiful photos on there. You can click on them and they expand to show you a whole picture. Mostly some early family stuff and stories from my parents and each of my brothers and sisters. I have kind of a history, a basic history of Maury and how he got into music and how he met Jim. There are stories from his record producers. Their partner, Phil Kernet, was the lawyer who helped them with all their business dealings. Kenny Loggins' story about the laundry story is on there.
So
He
cute.
wrote me a letter about that. Joe Salviolo, the professor from Glassboro. And Maury wrote a song called Salon and Saloon about a girl that we went to high school with. That story is on there. The song Maury that the record producers wrote all about Maury is on there that you can listen to. Stories from Maury opened for Jimmy Webb in Philadelphia. There's a little story from Jimmy Webb. Henry Gross was a performer. He wrote that song Shannon about
Oh, wow, yes.
the dog that died.
Yes.
Yeah, so Henry Gross is a friend of mine, and he knew Maury and Jim, and so he has a little blurb about Maury, and so I mean there's a lot of nice stories on there to read, family and friends, and I think you would like it. So go to that. There's a Facebook page all about Maury called Maury Meuheiser Fans. I would love anybody who wants to join that. Please feel free to come on that. I help with some Jim Croce sites. Some people have started some Jim Croce Facebook pages, and they have brought me on because I know things about Maury and Jim that the people who started the pages don't know. So
Yes.
I've just sort of have come on board to help answer some questions from time to time. So go on any of the Jim Croce pages. There's one called Songs by Jim Croce, I think it's called. Jim Croce, Time in a Bottle. Fans of Jim Croce by Upper Darby Bill. So there are a lot of sites out there about Jim. But Maury Meuheiser Fans is a nice Facebook page, and MauryMeuheiser.com is a good website.
Someone, Raymond, is saying to tell you about to tell
Frank Stallone.
Come on.
Oh, okay.
Let's hear it.
Well, Frank, we didn't know him, as kids. He moved to Trenton when we were it was around the time that Maury was being discovered and getting his Capitol Records album. And there was a group of young people who everybody was moving out of their homes. They were trying to say, we're old enough to be on our own. So there was a group of people who rented a home up the street from us, just a block and a half away. And there were a group of young musicians, and Frank Stallone was one of them. And he moved into this house up the street. And Maury got to know these people. One of the girls saw him walking down the street with his guitar and invited him in. And so they were all unknown, even Maury. But he had just gotten this record deal, so he was a little bit more known. And they had a group called Bananas. And it didn't go anywhere. And within a couple months, everybody moved out. All the guys in the bands moved out, and Maury but Frank Stallone stayed on that street. He just moved a couple doors up. So he hung out with everybody. He said, "I have a brother in New York who's going to be famous someday," and so that was pretty interesting. But we didn't know him.
You don't know him now?
We didn't. Why don't I? I've never met his brother.
Oh, no.
But I'm in touch with Frank. Frank and I are Facebook friends, and we go back and forth a little bit. And Frank came to New Jersey a few years ago, and did a radio show up at Trenton State College, or the College of New Jersey, and I was one of the guests on the show with him, and we
that's
talked about the
beautiful.
old Trenton days. And he just was in Philadelphia about a week or so ago because they did a documentary about his early career. And he's still, singing and playing out there in L.A. So,
Amazing.
yeah. But there was a lot of music and a lot of talented people in the Trenton area. I don't know if it was the Wood or in the Delaware or what, but Maury, and there was Jacobs Creek was a group of guys, Lon and Derek Van Eaton. There was a guy who grew up around the block from us, and he goes by the name Duke Williams. and he was Duke Williams and the Extremes. He was also called Alexander Rabbit. So it was kind of an obscure thing, but he's still around. And so these guys all keep in touch with each other. So when they do a radio show, they've asked me to come on to be part of. And T.J. Tyndall was another one. I think he played for, maybe it was Linda Ronstadt.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So these guys all lived. I mean, we rode bikes around the block
That is
together.
so cool.
Yeah. So everybody walked everywhere. So everybody knew, where everybody's houses were. And we all grew up and went to school together. So it's just amazing how many people were interested in music back then. And that they all went somewhere with it, made albums. Lon and Derek Van Eaton went and made, they were the first album signed to Apple Records. George Harrison signed them right after Maury got his Capitol Records thing. They got signed to Apple Records, and they went over to England, and George Harrison made an album with them.
If they were still alive today, how do you think they would react to today's music? The rap, hip hop?
I think they'd love everything.
You do?
Yeah. I think they both were very eclectic in their tastes.
Okay.
And, I try to think sometimes, what would they be doing? Would they still occasionally perform together? I'd like to think that they would.
I would say they would.
And I think that Maury, who was very gifted in music, a genius really, I believe that he would have gone on to be more of a composer.
Okay.
Not really Marvin Hamlish-like, maybe.
Okay.
But I think he would have composed music for movies, maybe.
Okay.
He wanted to do a children's story. He loved The Point. And I'm not sure if you know that, but Nielsen did that album called The Point, and it was like a cartoon movie. Me and My Arrow. Me and
Yes.
My Arrow.
Sure.
And the line, you put the lime in the coconut. I think that's
Yes,
part
of
of that.
course.
Okay, so I think Maury loved that so much. I remember him buying that album and saying, "Come up to my room." We had one of those suitcase-looking record players where you open it up like you're going to open a suitcase, but
Yes,
it's actually a
I
record
had
player.
one of those.
A turntable, and then you swing
Yeah.
swing the speakers out to the side, and he'd say, "Come in my room," and I'd go in and
The lime and the coconut.
yeah, and we would
Sure.
listen over and over and over again, and he'd pick the needle up and say, "Did you hear that? Did you hear what he said?" And listen to this, So we would listen to that, and he loved that so much. And I think he had in his head that he wanted to do something similar to that, like write a series of songs and make some kind of a little children's story, because again, he liked to see people smile. And I think that Jim would have done, I don't know what. I've thought about it many times. He would have done something in the business,
Okay.
but I'm not really sure what.
Okay.
He was older than Maury. He was 30 when they died. And I think, I don't know what was in store for him.
Okay.
He was a little tired at that moment
Okay.
because of all the traveling and his occasional throat problems. And I think he wanted to take a break, but I don't think he would have ever not been doing something in the music business.
Right.
I really don't. But I don't know what it would be. Yeah.
What a beautiful interview today, guys. I'm just on cloud nine. I want to thank you so much. What a beautiful interview. Who would have ever thought that I would be sitting here with the sister of Maury, Jim Croce's lead guitarist? I mean, think about that. You made my day.
Oh, thank you.
You
And you
made
made
my day.
mine. And I
made my
want to
day.
thank everybody, too, for all the people who have been in touch and who have sought out and looked for who was the guy with the long hair and the glasses sitting next to Jim Croce, the people who have found my website and the people who will find it.
Beautiful.
And listen to the music and go on YouTube and see Maury and Jim for yourself and see what sweet, kind, gentle souls that they were.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to thank everybody out there for listening and watching today. I hope you enjoyed today's interview as much as I did. So with that, I want to say good night to everybody.